Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. Jazakallah khair. Sorry for the technical issues. I'm going to start straight away talking about schools and education, but really I'm going to start off with quite a depressing and alarming statistic. Now, last month there was a poll done in America that collected some data from the Pew Research Academy about Muslims. And what they found was about 23% of Muslims who are born Muslim end up as adults not identifying themselves as Muslims. That means they leave the faith, they leave Islam. So if we think about 23%, roughly we're saying 1 in 4 people. So if you look around and we think nearly a quarter of the people in this room will end up leaving Islam. And it's shocking, and it's something that we should be really worried about and think about, why is this happening? Now, this was something, a research that was done in America, and we might think, oh, this is happening in America, it doesn't happen in England. But that's where you're wrong. Just from my own experience, a couple of months ago, I had a brother, he called me, he said to me, you know, Fouzia, I need some help with my daughter. And I said, what's happened? He said she's about 17 years old, and then he said she's struggling with a few things, and I said, what's she struggling with? And literally he couldn't even say the words. What he actually ended up saying was, she's saying she's not sure if she's a Muslim or not, and she's also saying that she doesn't know if God really exists. And he just that those words were so difficult for him to say, and for me to hear as well. And you know, he's just a guy, Muslim guy, relatively practicing, but he never thought in a million years that his daughter would grow up and say, I'm not a Muslim, or I don't believe in God. I have no idea what's happening. I'm not Muslim, I don't believe in God. And we sort of like think, what is happening? Why is this happening? Why is this happening in our communities? And what can we do about it? Is there something that we can do about it? Now, I want to ask everyone, I've been told to speak about the vision of Lady Nafisa School. Before I speak about the vision, I want everyone to sit and think about what their own vision is for your children. So just a minute, just think about, when you imagine your children older, what are the things that you think you want them to be? Now, guaranteed, probably one of the top 3 things are going to be, you want them to be good, righteous Muslims, something to do with deen, you want them to be good people. And definitely something about education, you want them to be well educated. And probably about you want them to be happy, because obviously we want our kids to be happy. So they are normally our top 3 things. And we normally would say we want them to be good, we want them to be good people as like number 1, good Muslims. We want them to practice the deen, love the deen. Now, when we think of our vision for our children, and then we think about our actions, are they in alignment with our vision? Because when you have a vision and you don't have actions that back up your vision, then there's a problem there. We're just passing time, wasting time. We're on this earth for a short period of time, and we have to be really clear about what we want in our lives and in the lives of our children, and then work towards that. Not to be, because I think a lot of people really focus on getting their children to have really excellent education, and they want them to be religiously minded as well, but is that really the pushing force in terms of how you raise your sons and daughters? Now, and why that's important as well, because even when you look at Maqasid al-Sharia, which is basically like the tenets, or the principles or the goals of the Sharia, the scholars have always put preservation of faith or deen above preservation of life itself. So the value that is given to protecting deen is above even protecting your own life. So it's absolutely essential that we have that and we follow that up with actions. And now, when I was talking about the school, we put that right at the center of what we do. Our first goal in Lady Nafisa School isn't, and I'm going to say this, is not about getting 10 A stars at GCSE. It absolutely is not. We have had students that come out with 10 A stars, alhamdulillah, but if they came out with 10 A stars, but they were not praying, or they were not sure about their faith, or they were what we call closet Muslims, they're embarrassed about their deen, we would have failed. So our primary goal is about tarbiyah. It's about raising and nurturing young Muslim girls. And also in about protecting their fitrah as well. So fitrah is something that we're born with, and society now and the education, it's in this country, it's very much like it goes against the fitrah of a child. Now, you know, the girls come, we have iman in our hearts. We want to create an environment that belief, that iman, that grows, it flourishes, it develops. So they love their deen, they love being Muslim, and they're proud of it. And of course, we follow that up with them with academics as well. But so, for example, like here we've got a picture. This is an event we had during Sira week, during Rabi al-Awwal. You know, we gathered together, we sang nasheeds with the teachers and the students, remembering and praising the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Here, down here, we've got girls doing a practical lesson. They were learning about how to tie ihram. So fiqh, you know, and learning about Hajj and the rights of Hajj and doing that. And we've got over there some students packing things for Ramadan parcels. And right in the middle, I put this picture. We worked with a Jewish school preparing some food to give in the soup kitchen. But again, knowing that sometimes people have a fear of other religions and other people, you know, and really trying to emphasize that, you know, we're Muslim and we're confident in our faith. We're not scared to meet other people and discuss issues and things like that. And we encourage that and develop that, this interfaith. And talking about this, you know, size as well. Now, the picture on the left shows us, these are our first few students that we had. These are the first 4 girls of Lady Nafisa school. And so we started off with 4 students. And why size is important is because if we're saying that we take on a student, their tarbiyah, their upbringing is absolutely important and crucial. We have to be able to look after the girls. So our school started off small, and it will absolutely always remain small. So we have got more than 4 students, but the idea being that if you now, you know, go into these big schools, I mean, here there's only about 25 students, but nowadays you have classes with 30. I mean, how much tarbiyah can you actually get, and let alone education? How much can that happen? I would say not much. And being a teacher, I've taught in classes where I've had 30, and you can't get done what you're supposed to get done, what you want to get done. So again, how we have our school is small, and that's how we want to keep it. And talking about teachers as well, in terms of them being a murabbiya, is someone who's there to give tarbiyah. I've been in education for about 15 years, and right at the beginning of my training, I was in a school in Hendon, which has got a large Muslim community, and I was in a year 5 classroom. This was a state school, and there was a discussion. It was a history lesson, and the teacher was talking about Henry VIII. And I remember this really clearly, because somehow the conversation moved on to one of the children in the class said something like, because they were talking about a man liking another man. And I do apologize to talk about this in the masjid, but you know, it has to be done. And the teacher stopped and said, what's wrong with that? And the boy looked first of all really like, oh no, he said something wrong. And she said, I want to talk about this. And then she stopped the lesson and for 15 minutes spoke about how, what's wrong, you know, if a man wants to like a man, or a woman likes a woman, there's nothing wrong with that. That should be their choice, and there's nothing unnatural about it. And the issue was that class had about 70% Muslims in that class. And clearly, at the beginning of that conversation, you could tell they were feeling uncomfortable because they know they've been told something else at home. At the end of the 15 minutes of her going on and on about this, they were nodding. They were nodding along. They were thinking, okay, what she's saying is making sense. Now, how many of those students went home and had a conversation with their parents and said, oh, in school, this is what happened, our teacher said this? I don't think many. And even if they did, what would parents have said? Now, you know, if you go home and you say, oh, this happened in school, parents might be like, oh, no, we don't believe in, that's not right, that's wrong. But the problem is that doesn't really cut it. You know, issues are nowadays complex, and you know, you can't just be like, no, we don't do this and we just do this. Because as the children get older and older, things get more complicated and they have more questions. And you know, and how many parents would sit for 15-20 minutes having an open discussion about this? Not many. So the fact that who is educating our children is so important. We want people to be righteous. We want them to have the light of Iman that they pass on. If you think about it, when people come to a masjid, they have a class here, the class lasts an hour. And, that's an hour well spent. But in a school, what you have is 7 to 8 hours. Every interaction that student has with a teacher is, inshallah, of benefit. It's a whole environment that's created. It's most of the day is spent in that environment, and that is a huge blessing. And it's something that, this is why I love to be involved in Islamic schools, and I want to see lots of them, and I want them to be really, really successful, because it has such an impact on young people, and they need it. They absolutely need it. Growing up in this time and this age and this society is incredibly difficult. And more so, this teacher was talking about, very openly talking about, no, this is right, and there's nothing wrong with that. Think about all the messages that are subconsciously also passed on to young people. So, for example, there was, like, even if you look at textbooks, like if you're doing GCSE, if you look at the RE textbook for Islam, and if you compare it to the textbook for Christianity, there's huge, bias towards Islam. So they will tackle issues on purpose that, we would, our average Western mind would find a bit challenging. But they're all in there. And they say things that they have a whole chapter on Harb al-Muqaddas, which is basically literally translated as holy war. We've never discussed Harb al-Muqaddas. In Islamic books, we say it's jihad. Jihad is not Harb al-Muqaddas. We don't say it's a holy war. But again, these things are in there. And, students are exposed to these things, and things that, you might subconsciously, as a student, take these on and think they're okay and they're normal. They're not. And also, looking at students being in that environment as well. One thing as a head teacher I've seen time and time again, when children are in an environment where Islam is, I must say alien, but it's something that is frowned upon, and not just Islam, even religion or belief in God, they come to and they're exposed to so much stuff, so many things that so if you have a student that's been in a state school for a couple of years and they come into Lady Nafisa, there's a massive difference to a student that has been in Islamic education from a young age. There is a huge difference. First of all, just the number of things that child has been exposed to is so much more. So much more. In a way, if you look at the girls, they will, they can seem maturer and more aware of these issues, and children in an Islamic school environment are much more protected from them. And when I say protected, I don't mean, we don't discuss anything. I just mean that there is innocence that, we would want to preserve and to keep. Whereas society today is about, they remove this innocence, and they, just whatever's out there, we want to teach our kids about it. And my experience with this was 15 years ago. What is happening now in schools and what is happening in the curriculum now is massive. And as parents, and you have to see that and think about what are our children learning in schools. And in terms of curriculum as well. Now, the curriculum matters is because one of the things here, we've got this picture of, this is a lady, a Pulse of Islam, and they came and spoke about being black and Muslim in Britain. Nowadays there's something I would like to say is religious illiteracy in our community. We don't know our history. We don't know basic things in our deen. And that's why when people come and say these crazy ideas and extreme ideas, and they quote a few hadiths and a few ayahs, and people will follow them, young people will follow them, they're not sure because they're like, they've quoted a hadith from Bukhari, this must be right. And we have to train up our young people to be able to stand up and say, no, I know that's not right, this is what I've been taught. And knowing about their background and themselves. So for example, when we looked at International Women's Day, this is just one of the displays we had up. We talked about women that have done amazing things, but also putting there Muslim women who've done amazing things as well. There's Nana Isma'u, there's Fatima Fihriya, and some of these names are coming now. People have heard about these names, but there's still more work to be done, and we want our young people to know about these things. Now, most people are learning tajweed or fiqh, simple things. They're like basic things, we would say, traditionally from a traditional Islamic education point of view. But people in their 20s or in their 30s learning the ahkam of tajweed, how to read the Quran properly. You know, we, myself included, I was in my 20s when I got my ijazah for Quran. But why make that same mistake with our next generation? Why not have them learning how to read the Quran properly and learning how to perform their prayers and doing all these things from a young age, and then moving on to other things as well. Not let's do everything else and then when they're 25 then think, oh no, I'm getting married now and I need to learn about the fiqh of marriage, need to get married, I need to learn about, you know, doing my zakat, I don't even know how to pay my zakat and things like that. So just talking briefly now about our journey. So this actually were our first few students, and just to say, you know, the 3-4 parents that put their daughters into our school, we were in a very, very small, teeny tiny building. And, you know, Jazakumullah khair to those parents that came and trusted us with their children. And, you know, sometimes I even think to myself, if I saw a school, how we were running it in that small space, would I put my daughter in that school? But these people trusted us to do that. And because of their initial effort and trust, that the school has grown and grown. And this is just a picture of us. We've got about 60 students now, and growing inshallah. And then we moved to this building, and we were just in this little quarter section of the building, quite cramped as well. Again, alhamdulillah, we grew. Every year we've got better and better at what we do. And now alhamdulillah, just the past month we moved into a much bigger building. We've got outdoor space as well. We've got 2 classrooms outside. And it's been a long journey and a difficult journey. And it needs a community to support projects like this. There's one Muslim girls' school in the whole of the Hounslow borough. One. And there's 35,000 Muslims that live in this borough. We need, just for this move, we need about £50,000 just to do this move. You see, builders have been on site, they've been building and building science labs and whatnot. If I think to myself, there's 35,000 of us and we can't support one Islamic school, you know, that is a real shame. And I would say, you know, mashallah to the elders in our community that set up the masajid for us. We have, mashallah, lots of masajid, and, you know, nice looking masajid as well. And we have our halal meat shops. You know, we have places where we can worship, we have places where we can eat. Now we need places where our young people can be educated, and it's absolutely essential. And we don't want to make the mistakes that are actually being made right now. If you're not sure about schools and why they're important, I would say speak to a parent who's got a child who's a teenager and see what type of struggles that they go through. And know that you don't always know about the struggles that they'll go through or your child is going through, but it's something that they will carry with them. And why repeat that? And so, you know, there's different ways to support us, and I mean, I don't want to go too much into it, but we will take zakat payment for the school and one-off donations and pledges as well. And there are some forms out there for the pledges. And also, we have a building now, but again, that's not the end of our vision. One of the things that I think we need to do is work and develop one. Now, this is Islamic garden. Does anyone know where this is? Anyone know? No? Prince Charles, Highgrove. Prince Charles has an Islamic garden in Highgrove, yeah? Just think, we have a green space in our school. I want to see us having an Islamic garden, and think of it as a community garden. Think of this as a dawah. Imagine opening our garden up on the weekends, letting the community come in. People come to the deen through these ways, and why not as a community benefit from the beauties of having an Islamic garden? That's a picture of a mosque in Cambridge. Does anyone know what's special about this mosque in Cambridge? Yes, Eco. It's the Eco Mosque in Cambridge. So this mosque, they want to have like a zero carbon footprint. If we are supposed to be Khalifa al-Ard, if we are supposed to be custodians of this land and doing these things, why can't we have a school? Let's have a school that's an eco school. Work towards that. And even looking at, scholarships and waqf, having a waqf. When I was in Fez, we learned about, there's loads of cats in Fez. And we learned about one person when they passed away, they left a waqf to feed all the cats. So every day somebody goes out and feeds all the cats in Fez. So waqf is something when you die, you leave part of your inheritance or whatever to do the service. Now, I would think, why not have people have, when you die, give a portion of your inheritance too. I want to educate one child every year in Lady Nafisa school, or in our communities, have a family. Say you have 5 brothers or 3 sisters or whatever, come together and be like, every year we want to donate £500 and we want to put that to educate 2 families at Lady Nafisa school. I mean, and if you don't have any daughters, or you don't have any teenagers, and you think, oh, what's the point? It's nothing to do with me. What I would say is, do not think just about yourselves. Do not think about your own little family unit. Yeah, we're one ummah. When that brother called me and spoke to me about his daughter, I felt that in my heart. I thought, subhanAllah, what a trial that this person is going through. What can I do to help that person? And we should think about that as well. If you've got children that have grown up and they're mashallah doing well, think about the person sitting next to you. What about their kids? Maybe they can't afford to send their kid to an Islamic school. Maybe you could help with that. We need to start thinking about strengthening our communities, because when you have children that are coming out through these institutions, they will build stronger communities. And with stronger communities, we can do something, inshallah. And just finally, I would say as well, that we have this idea, Muslims, we got this thing, white coat syndrome, I call it. When we see Muslims running an organization, whether it's a school or whatever it is, and you might have a little bit of a bad experience or something, or say you've seen one Islamic school and it wasn't very impressive, we would write off that whole, all Islamic schools, don't even bother. Yeah, don't even bother going there, because you've had one bad experience or you've heard one negative thing. Why would we do this to our own community? Because other communities don't do that. In America, there's a Jewish school. 3 Nobel Prize winners came from that Jewish school. 3. There are some terrible Jewish schools in our community in London here. Terrible. I don't see the Jewish community shunning off all Jewish schools just because of those terrible schools. You have to give support and have to believe that we can do something. Now, I'm going to end with one of my favorite quotes, and anyone who ever comes to Eleanor's Open Days, I always end with this as well. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed people can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. So we should believe in our community, believe in our strength that we have. We have got educated people, we've got entrepreneurs, we've got a lot to give in our community. Let's come together and put that huge amount of energy and passion into setting up these institutions. And I just want to say, not just Lady Nafisa, other institutions as well. We desperately need a boys' school, desperately need a boys' school. We need other things as well. So inshallah, let's work together and do that. Jazakallah khair. There are buckets going around, is that right? For the brothers as well? Yeah. Okay, there's some buckets going around. Everything that you're putting into the bucket now is going towards this, the cost of the move. So whatever you have, inshallah. We also have some pledge forms. One of the things that we found quite a lot of people do is they pledge. So you might not have the money on you now, but you might pledge saying, I will give £500, and then you will come together with your family and friends and think of, each of you contributing £100 each or something like that. I have those here as well, inshallah.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وسلم. Alhamdulillah, this is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's fadl, His grace and mercy that we are gathered here in this Musalla. Is a masjid? What is it? It's a masjid? Allahu Akbar. Allah keep it and preserve it and give it plenty of barakah, inshallah. I grew up in Gloucester at a time when there were probably a handful of masajid in the whole country. And it was kind of very difficult to find places where you would have Taraweeh And now, alhamdulillah, throughout the UK, you have thousands, literally thousands of places where you have Tarawih, and you have thousands of places where you have Salat and these masajid. And this is the fadl of Allah, that He has used Muslims who came here through immigration to advertise His deen. So Islam is advertised through Muslims. Islam is not advertised through the angels. They don't come down from the heavens and tell our neighbors, this is Islam. Islam is advertised by the people who say they are Muslim. So over the course of the past 50 years, 40 years, as you've seen, there has been an evolution within the Muslim country, and we've managed and we've been able to develop a certain infrastructure over these 40, 50 years. One infrastructure obviously is the masajid, that we have plenty of those and Allah give us more. And the other infrastructure is the halal meat industry, which has taken over mainstream Britain, where, you know, even the non-Muslims eat halal, which is a sign of Allah's fadl, because if they eat halal, maybe some halal thoughts will come into their minds. Inshallah. But that's a process. Then you have the clothing industry, and you have other industries that Muslims participate in, and they make sure it becomes part of society, part of mainstream Britain. What happens now is also very necessary, as the mashallah, the Ustadah mentioned. This is the phase where we need to build the infrastructure for institutions. We need institution building people who see the value of educational institutions, of colleges, universities, and so on. And if we do this, inshallah, our presence in this country will become even more formidable than it already is. So, institutions are what we call the window into education. If you want to be educated, you can't really be educated from the mimbar. The mimbar, you'll have 15 minutes, some people take half an hour, and some people might take 45 minutes. But it's not real education. Education is organized, it is structured, it is systematic, and in that sense it is a process. And without having institutions to facilitate that process, there is really no true education of Islam. So in our communities we have education at a very basic level, a very mundane level, and that is through the makatib, the maktabs, that children go to these schools, if you like to call them, after school, from 5 to 7, and they learn their basic tajweed or the qiraat, how to recite the Quran, and they learn certain points of fiqh, how to do their salat, and everything else of this, and they learn their basic aqidah. All this is wonderful, and there's no doubt about the utility of these institutions that are known as makatib, and they're scattered throughout the country, as we all know, mashallah. At the same time, when we don't have institutions to educate Muslims from the young age of 5 or 6 or 7, then we're in a vacuum, basically. And this is the point I want to make here tonight before we go. And that is, what is the role of a parent when it comes to educating their children Islamically? Meaning, what is the Islamic obligation for parents vis-a-vis the education, the Islamic education of their children? So it's a valid question, I hope, inshallah. And we would like to address it in the following: that it is important and necessary for you to teach your children what it is necessary for you to know yourself. Usually we pass on the buck to the kids. If there's a program in the masjid, it's good for the kids. If there's a speaker who comes to town, let's talk about the youth. But there's no responsibility on the adult. Right? Even that we must develop the young people. So in Islam, Islam came for the adults. The Sahaba, were they children or were they adults? Who were they? They were adults, they were mature people. So revelation came to mature adults, because mature adults, they need seasoning, they need tazkiyah, they need purification, they need their Islam, they need their reformation, they need to know how to deal with the dunya, how to deal with their neighbors, how to deal with their colleagues at work, how to do business. They need all of this education also. Right? They need how to know how to keep family ties. They need to know how to do what they need to do in order to survive in this country, and also how to survive death, and what they need to know about the akhirah and all of that. They need to know all of this just as much as the children need to know. So there is a responsibility upon the adult to educate himself and herself, as the Prophet ﷺ said, طَلَبُ الْعِلْمِ فَرِيضَةٌ عَلَى كُلِّ مُسْلِمٍ. That seeking knowledge is an obligation on every Muslim. Not every child, every Muslim. So we see that the responsibility of education is on the adult, then on the parent, and then that comes down and trickles down into the children eventually, inshallah ta'ala. For this, we have a concept which most of you know, if not all of you, and that is called the concept of fard ayn. That every Muslim must know the fard ayn, what is necessary on an individual to know and to learn. If we can establish that we know our fard ayn, then we will be, inshallah, amongst the groups of people who will be naji and saved, and they will acquire through Allah's full salvation. But if the adult chooses to ignore his or her own deen and her own knowledge of Islam, then that is a recipe for disaster, because there will be a very big difference between what the child knows and what the parent knows. So now, if you want to say that you need to read the Quran through tajweed, then the adult also needs to know how to read the Quran with tajweed, at least the basics of tajweed. If you say that you need to know your aqidah correctly, that what is your aqidah vis-a-vis Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, vis-a-vis the akhirah, vis-a-vis the angels, vis-a-vis the day of judgment, of Jannah and Jahannam, all of these points of aqidah, they must be known and they must be taught. And who needs to know this? Not the child who goes to Sunday school, or not the child who goes to maktab, it is you. The adult needs to know in such a way that the adult is able to articulate this to their children. So, in the early days of Islam, every adult knew fard ayn, and no parent ever sent a child to the madrasa or to the maktab to learn fard ayn, because it was the parent who taught them. So you raise the bar. Okay? So what we need to do, we need to raise the bar of academics, raise the bar of Islamic awareness by knowing ourselves what we need to know for our salvation. That's called aqidatul najat and fiqhul najat. The aqidah of salvation and the fiqh of salvation, that what makes or breaks my wudu, what makes or breaks my salat, what makes or breaks my fast, and what makes or breaks my zakat and hajj. And this is all fard ayn. This is an obligation. Every Muslim must know this. Otherwise, they will be held accountable on the Day of Judgment by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is our aqidah towards learning. So, learning is a process, but this process can only be facilitated if the adults participate and learn themselves. So now you've created an environment and a culture of learning and knowing in your household, and unless you are willing to put in time with your child to know and to learn, the child will not be impressed with you. Okay? The child is very convinced with dual standards and double standards. So we must appreciate that the Muslim Ummah in the past, in its glory days, was blessed primarily because everybody in the Ummah had a standard level of knowing and understanding the deen that was representative of the deen itself. Now, where we need to focus on nowadays, especially here in the West, is for us to have certain types of workshops and certain types of seminars and discussions where we as adults come in and start learning about these issues. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu qu anfusakum wa ahlikum nara. O you who believe, protect yourselves. And then your families. Is anfusakum first, protect yourselves. And then your families from the fire or from a fire. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala emphasizes that if there's something in the environment that is going to destroy your chances of salvation, then you must know about it. Otherwise you'll end up in the fire. And what are these elements, and what are these feelings, what are these sentiments, what are these ideas and philosophies? We must know about it so that we protect ourselves from the pollutants in the environment. So if there's an atmosphere, an environment of atheism, then we as adults need to know how to combat this, how to protect ourselves from this. Instead of saying that the schools need to take care of this with our children, well, what about you? You need to participate in your own knowledge, in your own education. If there are now issues of drugs in the community, that drugs are being distributed, then you should know about it. That's the only way you're going to save yourself and your children from those drugs. But if you choose to be isolationist, and if you choose to ignore the issue, or if you choose to say that you're going to be complacent and nonchalant about the whole thing, then that's going to come back to haunt you. So we can't afford not to be engaged in knowing what is happening in mainstream Britain for the sake of our Iman, for the sake of our Islam, and for the sake of our Deen. We need to participate in the discussion as much as we need to teach our children. So this is one advice I'd like to give first and foremost, that the emphasis of the Quran and Sunnah, the emphasis of Islam is on the education of the individual first. Then as you move out and you start to educate the community, then the community will be educated in a way, in the process, through these schools, Muslim schools, and through these academies, and through these colleges, institutions, inshallah, at a much higher level, and we can go forward very, very far with these education institutions, inshallah. But the first thing is that we must identify what is attain, what is an individual responsibility, and then we can identify what is kifaya. Right. So in the discussion of knowledge, and in discussion of saying what is necessary for a Muslim Ummah to know, then the scholars have written about that also, because they lived it and they practiced it. And this is how the Muslim civilization developed, because the Muslim civilization was developed on the back of ilm, not on the back of jahl. When we say in our grand history, mashallah, that maybe 1300 years or so, that we were a major power in the world, and we were the civilization to be, then how do you think we established that? Was it through ilm or was it through jahl? Was it by knowing or was it by not knowing? It was by knowing. When people flocked to Baghdad and flocked to Spain from the West in order to learn the sciences from the Muslims in Arabic, in Arabic. The official medium of instruction in the Muslim lands was Arabic. And people from Europe would come to these institutions in the Muslim lands and they would read and write in Arabic. And they would go back and they would write their essays and their articles in Arabic. So that if this was the height of our civilization, it was premised upon knowledge, upon knowing that which was Fard Kifaya and teaching that which was Fard Kifaya, that it is a community responsibility, and that was upheld by the generous donations of businessmen and philanthropists and also the state. That all of these people got together and said that we are going to become a civilization of knowledge, and we're going to learn and we're going to impart knowledge, and those sciences flourished. Sciences of medicine, sciences of engineering, sciences of astronomy, and sciences of everything else that people came to learn from the Muslims. They flourished because the average person's knowledge of Islam was at such a high level that they could afford to do this. Now, if the average level of a Muslim adult who's 30 years old is that he doesn't know how to read the kalima, and he doesn't know how to make wudu, or he doesn't know how to read the Quran, or he doesn't know salat, or he doesn't know anything about Sawm, then where are you going to start building this civilization? You're starting from below zero. So the way forward is to acknowledge the need for adults to participate in their education so that we can raise the bar and we can start doing other things in the name of Fard Kifaya, where these institutions that are colleges and universities and all these Muslim schools, they can do something that is much more than Fard Ayn, much more than what is an individual responsibility, where the parents will be teaching them what is Fard Ayn and the schools will be teaching them what is Fard Kifaya. This is how you develop a system of civilizational values and also civilizational education, both. And this is how we've always been until recently, until people came and told us that anything that has to do with the Quran and anything that has to do with the Sunnah, wahi-based knowledge is no good because it won't get you a job in the government. Right. That's what happened. Then that's a tragedy, but there's hope that we can revive some of this tradition, inshallah, in our lifetimes, and we can go forward with this mission and vision that we need to educate ourselves. Finally, since, mashallah, the time is very late, and I guess you still want your food, right? No, you don't want your food? Then we can stay here the whole night. Mashallah. Very good. We must appreciate that the difference between Islamic knowledge and secular knowledge there are many. But one is our approach. That in Islamic sciences, we believe in what we call a precedent. That we need to find a precedent in the Quran and Sunnah, or in the lives of the Sahaba, or in the works of the jurists, in order to rule upon a new issue, a contemporary issue. What do I mean by that? Let's say that narcotics. You have the opioid epidemic, and you have narcotics, and you have drugs. Now, there is no explicit reference to narcotics in the Quran and Sunnah. There's no explicit reference. But we all say that it's haram. How do we get that ruling? How do we determine that? We determine that through a process called qiyas, legal analogy, and that is based on establishing a precedent. That you build knowledge on something that has been established as Islamic. And you draw an analogy from here to here. This is the methodology of learning more in Islam. That if you want to increase your knowledge in Islam, it must be based on something that's already Islamic and proven to be Islamic in the first place. Is that clear? That making sense? Good. Whereas in secular education, especially in science, the premise is almost exactly the opposite. Almost the opposite. Where you don't care whether there's a precedent or not. You are just going to go with your hypothesis, and you're going to do some experimentation, and then you're going to draw conclusions, and from those conclusions, if you can prove your theory, then it's a theory, and if later on it becomes a fact, then it becomes a universal fact. But it's not based on a precedent. So in secular knowledge, you don't need precedents. In Islamic knowledge, you need precedents. And that is called, in Islamic terminology, ittiba'. What's it called? Ittiba', following. Islam is a religion based on what? Ittiba', following what? Wahi. Following what? Wahi. And other sciences, they're not based on ittiba'. They're based on ibtida', which is creation. Which is what? Creation. From which you get the word bid'ah. Where do you get the word bid'ah from? Ibtida', where it's a new creation, it's an innovation. It's an innovation because it's not premised on something that's already Islamic. So now, in our methodology of trying to understand Islam in a secular framework, the two approaches are diametrically opposed to each other, therefore there's no overlap. They don't work. It's like mixing oil with water. They're not going to come together, right? Because Islam is based on ittiba'. You say that there is ijtihad. Abu Hanifa came and he made ijtihad. Imam Malik came and he made ijtihad. And who came? Imam Shafi came, he made ijtihad. And Imam Ahmad came, he made ijtihad. So ijtihad is based on something that's already there. You don't create or legislate afresh. Whereas ibtida' is that you're going to create something which is not there. And you're going to create something from nothing, where you have your experimentation and your scientific theories and your discoveries and your inventions, and the rest is history. But the approach to knowledge in both are very, very different. So we must be careful that we must not try to squeeze Islam into an educational system which is diametrically opposed to the Islamic way of learning. They have to be kept very separate and very, very different, so that we know what we know about Islam is based on wahi, and what we know about science is not based on wahi, even though you might find one or two ayahs of the Quran that speak about certain facts of the universe or the embryo or whatever. Those are coincidental. So what I would like to propose is that we must not be rushing towards saying that we will have an Islamic school in the real sense of the word, with a capital I, that's going to now revolutionize the world. That ain't happening, as we say in the States. That ain't happening. Forget about it. What the most you can do is you can give your child an Islamic education which is based on Islamic knowledge, that is based on wahi. It's wahi-based knowledge, and with that wahi-based knowledge you will be able to understand how you procure your salvation. Because the purpose of Islamic knowledge is to make sure your ability to procure salvation is safeguarded. If you have all the knowledge in the world but your salvation is not safeguarded, then you're in trouble. Right? Why do we pray? What am I doing? the issue of whether or not a woman can lead a prayer. Somewhat of an issue. People talk about it. People actually do that, where women lead the prayer here and there, although they're in the minority. But the issue, in theory, what's the problem? The problem is that salat is a form of ibadah that is revealed. Is that true? Did the Prophet ﷺ initiate salat, or was salat revealed to him? What do you say? So was it through ittiba that we have salat, or was it through ibtida that we have salat? So the purpose of salat is to procure salvation and to receive reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of judgment. Is that true? Why else would you do all this? Why go through all this bother of wudu and tahara and then coming to the masjid and praying and this and that, and subhanAllah, what a mujahidah, what a sacrifice. If it's just for societal reasons, or if it's just for equal opportunity, or if it's just for equal rights, that's not in the equation of your ibadah, because ibadah is merely and simply for your salvation and to receive reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So where wahi tells us there is reward in this and there is no reward or less reward in this, which one do you choose? The one that has a reward. Is that true? Why? Because this is based on ittiba, it's based on following wahi, not inventing wahi. You understand what I'm saying? So now, if there is a nas, or if there's a hadith, or if there's something in the Quran, or if there is something in the consensus of ulama through the generations of Muslim scholars that tell us that this is not valid, then it is not valid because there's no reward in it. Not because there's no utility to it, right? Not because there's no social agenda in it. So this is where we see that the two methodologies will differ. When you look at Islam, Islam must be based on ittiba, which is following wahi, whereas other theories, even social theories or political theories and economic theories of today, they are not at all based on wahi or wahi-based knowledge. They're not based on ittiba', they're based on ibtida', which is being creative. Now, you can be creative in order to coexist in the world, but it's not necessarily Islamic. You understand what I'm saying? The laws of nature work equally for Muslims and non-Muslims. So if you're teaching your children the laws of Newtonian physics, will you say that this law, since it's in line with the Quran and Sunnah, is going to work better for Muslims and is not going to work for non-Muslims? What are you going to say? Does water boil at 100 degrees for Muslims and non-Muslims alike? Sure it does. Why are you going to say no? Because we know this through wahi, then water is going to boil for us at 99 degrees. That doesn't happen. So in matters of the world, in order to live in the world, you do have science, and you have utility, and you have your objectives of life, and you have a political system, an economic system, and or whatever. All these systems are fine. That is to facilitate life in the world. It is not to facilitate reward in the akhirah. Okay? So you must make this distinction. So if you do teach these sciences in a Muslim school, they're for the purpose of living in the world, they're not for the purpose of salvation and for the sake of rewarding the akhirah. You must make that distinction. Also, as you try to improve the quality of education in our Muslim schools in this country also. So the idea, or perhaps the conclusion, is that the methodology of knowing more in Islam is based on ittiba', following wahi, where wahi will lead you this way. Now, when you have people who follow wahi, they also become very dynamic scholars. People say that, well, you're telling Muslims now to be backwards and to be retrogressive, not to be crazy. No. The amount of work that these scholars have done, and to use the word created, post-Wahy is phenomenal. And we had people who wrote and wrote and wrote, and we have millions and millions of books on Islamic knowledge written by Muslim scholars, not because they were inept or inert or because they were not creative, but they did their job in the sense that they followed Wahy, they developed theories based on something that is already there. They didn't develop any theory that was not there. And if somebody did do that, then the Muslim scholars would challenge that theory and say, this doesn't seem right. Whereas the other methodology of learning science and other skill sets in a Muslim school is based on your existence in this world. There's a utility to it, there is no doubt, and we may learn it and we may teach it and we may also excel in it. And we may earn a lot of money through it too. But that's for your life in this world, is not for your salvation, and it definitely is not for rewarding the akhirah, even though your intention may be that you want to help yourself and help your family by earning halal. You will be rewarded for that intention, there's no doubt in that. But it does not make it necessarily something that every Muslim needs to know. Right? Every Muslim needs to know everything that is necessary for his or her own salvation, but every Muslim doesn't need to know every field of science. Okay? So this will stop. Inshallah. اللهم يا حي يا قيوم برحمتك نستغيث اصلح لنا شأننا كله ولا تكلنا إلى أنفسنا طرفة عين فإنك إن تكلنا إلى أنفسنا تكلنا إلى ضعف وعورة وذنب وخطيئة. اللهم لا مانع لما أعطيت ولا معطي لما منعت ولا راد لما قضيت ولا ينفع ذا الجد منك الجد. وصلى الله تعالى على خير خلق محمد وآله وأصحابه أجمعين برحمتك يا